والصلاة والسلام على سيد أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Now in last week's lesson we made a start of the section with regards to unjust and impurity. And just a quick recap of what we discussed in last week's lesson. I basically mentioned three important points with regards to this particular section. The first point I mentioned was that there are two types of najasa or impurity in the Hanafi school of thought. The first is called najasa ghaliza, a heavy, dense type of impurity. And then that is then further split up into two more categories. The first is called mar'iyya, i.e. those impurities which can be visibly seen by the naked eye, such as blood, such as feces and so on. And then the second category is called ghair mar'iyya, i.e. something which does have a trace, which does have a body and a substance, but it's not that clearly seen or it's not that clearly visible or evident from afar. And the two examples again was with regards to urine and alcohol. And then the second category of najasat or impurity is called khafifa, and that is a light type of impurity or najasa, which, for example, the ruling we're going to look at later, and examples of those are the urine of halal animals. And then I went on to mention that it is imperative for our namaz to be accepted, that we have to make sure that our body is clean. We have to also make sure that the clothes we are wearing is also clean and pure. And finally, we have to make sure that the place where we are reading and observing our salah, that has to be clean and pure as well. Because if any of these things are omitted, i.e. just say for example our body is not clean, our clothes is not sparse or pure, or the place where we are observing our salah is not clean and pure, then our namaz will not be accepted. And then the final point I mentioned in last week's lesson was that in the Hanafi fiqh, or according to the Hanafi school of thought, cleaning or purifying something impure or nafaq is not restricted to water. But instead, you are allowed or you are permitted to use water or any sparse or pure substance which has the capability of eradicating the najas and impurity from that particular garment or from the body. You can use that to get rid of the impurity. And the example which we looked at in last week's lesson was with regards to vinegar and rose water. That vinegar or rose water, even though it's not like water, it doesn't have the same qualities or traits of water, but it does the same job in terms of it kind of eradicates something impure, it kind of eradicates najas. So therefore, in the Hanafi fiqh, other schools of thought are slightly different in terms of, like they say that you have to use water, but in the Hanafi fiqh we say that when it comes to cleaning or purifying a garment or a body, it's not restricted to water, but instead an individual is allowed to use other pure and pure substances besides water. The condition is that as long as it kind of gets rid of the impurities, then it will be permissible for you to use that. Now, today's lesson, we're going to begin from the mani section of Quduri. And Imam Quduri rahmatullahi alayhi says, وَالْمَنِيُّ نَجَسٌ, that mani or semen is something which is impure. Now, according to Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi and also Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi, they are of the view that semen, which in Arabic is known as mani, and we kind of discussed the three words before, mani, mati, and wadi. But basically, mani is that semen which comes out after intercourse or after you have a wet dream. So it's a thicker semen. So according to Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik rahmatullah alayh, they both have said that money is something which is impure and something which is najis. Now, besides Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik, Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayh and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahmatullah alayh are the view that semen or money is pure and is pak. So according to Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayh, if say for example, if you have semen on your clothes, then it doesn't affect the validity of your salah, your namaz, and your namaz will be done. According to Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahmatullah alayh, if you have semen on your clothes, on your body, then your namaz and your subsequent salah will be accepted. Because according to them, the actual thing itself is pak and pure. Now don't get me wrong, Dave. If a person, say for example, has a wet dream or has intercourse, obviously Imam Ahmad, Imam Shafi rahmatullah, they say that you have to go for a bath. However, the actual substance, we're just talking about the substance here, we're not talking about how it came out, we're just talking about the actual substance. So according to Imam Shafi and Imam Ahmad, they say that it is pure and it is pak. Just for your information, Imam Nawawi rahmatullah alayhi, a great Shafi scholar, is actually mentioned that Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi has got three opinions with regards to semen from an animal. With regards to human being, he says that it is pure and pak. But with regards to semen which comes from an animal, Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi has got three opinions. One opinion is that it is pak and pure, the same way human semen is pak and pure. Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi says that semen from an animal is also pak and pure. And another opinion of Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi is that it is najas and it is impure. So semen from animals are impure. And his third opinion is that those animals which are lawful to consume, such as your goats, your sheep, your cows, your camels, their semen is pure and pak. However, those animals which are unlawful to consume, such as your dogs, such as your khinzir, such as your pigs, your tigers, and so on, then their semen is considered impure and is considered najas and napak. Now let's just kind of elaborate on this particular issue a bit more in detail. Imam Shafi rahmatullah has got two reasons why he says that semen of human beings are pure and pak. Now his two evidence or his two reasons are, number one, he says that the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, i.e. the prophets and the messengers, they were born or they were created through semen. So Imam Shafi rahmatullah says that look, when the noble prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were created with semen, the very same substance which everyone else in the world has been created with, so we can't consider that particular liquid or fluid to be considered impure and najis. When great people like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all the various prophets since Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, they were created with that same fluid, so it will be disrespectful for us to say that this fluid is something which is impure and najis. And the second opinion, or the second reason, shall I say, of Imam Shafi rahmatullah considering semen to be pure and pak and not impure, is that there is a hadith which can be found in Sunan al-Dar al-Quduri, narrated by Hazrat Ibn Abbas anhu, and this narration is also a marfu narration and also a mawquf narration as well, where Sayyidina Ibn Abbas anhu says that al-maniyyu bi manzilatil mukhat, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that mani or semen is similar to that of mukhat. Mukhat is basically the snots which come from the nose. And then the hadith goes on to say, فَأَمِتْهُ عَنْكَ وَلَوْ بِإِذْخَ, that eradicate or get rid of the impurity even though it may be with the tip of a stick. So the same way the snot from our nose, even though it's not something nice, we won't walk around with snot coming out from our nose, but the actual snot itself is not impure. So exactly the same, Imam Shafi'i rahmatullah is saying that, look, even though it's not something we should walk around with, i.e. like having semen on our clothes or on our body, but the actual substance itself is not impure and is not najis. Now with regards to the Hanafi fiqh, as I said, that Imam Hanif rahmatullah alayh, we say that semen is something which is impure and najis. And our two main daleels or our two main evidence are, number one, is that in the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described mani or has described semen with the word mimma'in mahi. And mahi gives the meaning of something which is filthy and something which is weak and something which is najas and something which is filthy. So that is one daleel or one evidence of ours. And the second evidence of ours is that we use a bit of analytical reasoning, which in Arabic is known as qiyas, where we say or where we ask ourselves that where does the money or where does the semen come from? So the answer is that the semen, it comes from our private part, it comes from our zakat, it comes from our penis. Now besides the semen or money, what else comes from our private part? So the answer is that urine comes from our private part, and also mazi, which is a kind of like a liquid which comes out when a person is fantasizing or when a person, say for example, is kissing his wife and a thin liquid comes out. Now all the scholars agree that urine and even mazi as well, that is impure and najis. So therefore, when urine and mazi which comes out from a penis is also impure and najis, so that will also mean that money which comes from the same place as of urine and mazi, that will also be impure as well. So the conclusion we can come to, according to Imam Hanifa and also Imam Malik rahmatullah alayh, is that semen or money is something which is impure, and when it comes out, then irrespective of whether it comes out like for example, after having a wet dream, or as I mentioned before, some people, they may have some illness and some money or some semen comes out. Irrespective of how it comes out, it is considered something impure and it is considered as najis. Now, those scholars who have said that money or semen is impure, they slightly differ with regards to how to clean or purify a garment or an area which has some money or which has some semen on. Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi has said that semen mutlaqan you have to wash it. I.e., if the semen is wet or if the semen or money is dry, you have to wash it in both situations. Whereas according to Imam Abu Hanif rahmatullah alayhi, and this is then further mentioned later, he says that if the semen is wet, if it's just like, say for example, just come out of your private parts and it's on your shorts or it's on your lungi or whatever, then if he has just come out, because it is still wet, it is still kind of fresh. So therefore the only way you can purify that particular garment is by washing. However, if the semen has got stuck on your clothes and it has dried on your clothes, then in that situation, again it is preferable and advisable that you wash it. But if you don't wash it, but instead you kind of scratch it off, either with your fingernails or with a stick or with the edge of a knife or something like that, then as long as the traces of the semen or the najas disappears from that particular garment, then that particular garment will also be considered park and will also be considered pure as well. So what I'm trying to say is that in the Hanafi, there are basically two ways to clean a garment or clothes which has semen on. If it's fresh or if it's wet, then you have to wash it. However, if it's, for example, dried on your clothes, then there are two ways of cleaning it. Either you can wash it, or if you want, you can actually scratch it off. Obviously, it's much easier to actually wash it off, but sometimes you may not find water. Then in that situation, it may be more easier for you to actually scratch that area off. And if you do scratch it off and get rid of the essence and the body of that impurity from the clothes, then that clothes or garment will be considered stark and pure. So this was what is mentioned by Imam Quduri from the following text, where he says that it is obligatory to wash wet money or to wash wet semen, and then he goes on to say, فَإِذَا جَفَّ عَلَى الثَّوْبِ أَجْزَأَهُ فِيهِ الْفَرْقُ, that if the semen has got or is dried on the clothes, so it got dried on the clothes and it now becomes stuck on the clothes, then أَجْزَأَهُ فِيهِ الْفَرْقُ, then in that situation it will be permissible for you to scratch it off, and by scratching it off, then that particular garment or that particular cloth will be considered pure. The next text, Imam Quduri rahmatullahi says, وَالنَّجَاسَةُ إِذَا أَصَابَتِ الْمِرْآةِ أَوِ الصَّيْفِ اِكْتَفَى بِمَسْحِهِمَا, that if some impurity, so najas, so it could be anything, whether it's semen, whether it's urine, whether it's blood, whether it's alcohol, whatever, if it falls on a mir'at, or we say, or it falls on a knife, on the blade of a knife, then iktafa bi masihima, then it is sufficient for you to wipe over that surface, and then that surface will be considered stark and pure. Now the next ruling which Imam Quduri rahmatullahi mentioned is something which is very important. And that is that at home we have a lot of like shiny surfaces. Like for example, say on the sink top, or just say for example, the table which is nice and shiny and clippy. Sometimes like many people at home, they have laminate floorings and so on. Now if any of these places, if any impurity or najas falls on that area, it's not necessary for you to get a bucket of water and just put it on that. But instead the Sharia has said that if you get, say, like a wet cloth and you wipe over that particular area or surface, then that area will become stark and pure. There's no need for you to change the laminate. There's no need for you to chuck that table away and buy a new one. But instead, if you wipe over that particular area and the traces of the impurity goes away with the wiping, then that particular surface and that particular area will be considered stark and pure. So that is the ruling here. The two words which the author mentioned is with regards to mirrors and blades. Obviously, modern equivalent of that would be any surface which is like slippy, which kind of like you can, which is slippy and which is shiny. For example, like your laminate flooring or any kind of tables or surfaces in the kitchen around that area. Then if any impurities or any kind of najas was to fall on that, then if you were to wipe over it, then that particular area will be considered stark and pure. And another example which we can look at here is with regards to the bathroom flooring. Now sometimes, for example, if somebody was in the bathroom and just say some urine or something fell on the floor. So again, it's not necessary for you to get some water and wash that. If you get a mop and you just wipe over it, then that particular area will be considered stark and pure. So what I'm trying to say is that any impurity which falls on something slippy, you don't have to wash that. You don't have to get some kind of bleach and then wash that particular area, put a bucket full of water over that area. No. Obviously, if it was something like clothes, then you have to do that. But if it's something slippy and a kind of slippy area, then if you were to wipe over that area with a mop or with some kind of cloth, then that particular area would be considered stark and pure. The next text, Imam Quduri rahmatullahi goes on to say, is with regards to earth or with regards to a land, a piece of land. And if some impurity was to fall on that particular land, then what would you do, or how would you make that particular area park or pure? Now Imam Quduri rahmatullahi says, وَإِنْ أَصَابَتِ الْأَرْضِ نَجَاسَةٌ فَجَفَّتْ بِهِ الشَّمْسُ وَذَهَبَ أَثْرُهَا جَازَتِ الصَّلَاةُ عَلَى مَكَانِهَا وَلَا يَجُوزُ التَّيَمُّمُ مِنْهَا. Now the following text tells us that if some impurity was to fall on some kind of land or on a ground, so just say for example, like you've got a back garden and some impurity fell on that particular garden. Just say you've got some garden there, some land, and some urine or some blood fell on that particular area. Now there are in total 3 ways where you can get that particular land or that particular area clean. There are 3 ways which are mentioned from hadith and from the text of the jurists and the fuqaha. The first way which is mentioned in the actual text itself is that if the sun, say for example, was to dry that particular area, and it dried the area to such an extent that وَذَهَبَ أَثْرُهَا, that the traces of the impurity and the najas is not there anymore. And what I mean by the traces here, i.e. the smell and the stain. I.e. when you look at that area, there's no stain of any blood anymore. The stain of urine, say for example, has disappeared. And also the smell has also disappeared as well. So when the smell and also the color and the stain of that area has disappeared due to the sun absorbing the impurity and the najas, then that particular area has become park. But it's only park and pure partially. I.e. in terms of you will be allowed to pray salah on that area. However, you will not be able to do tayammum of that particular area. And this is what the author mentions here, that he only gives you a partial purification. I.e. when the sun absorbs something and takes away the impurity and najas, then he only gives you a partial purity and tahara, i.e. that you will be allowed to pray salah on that particular area. However, it will not be permissible for you to do tayammum from that particular area. So that is one way of getting a land or a garden where some impurity has fallen clean and park. The second way is sabbul ma. Sabbul ma means to pour water over that particular area. So just say for example your garden or your front garden, there is some urine or some impurity on that area, then the second way you can get that garden or that area clean is by pouring water over that particular area. And the third way is by hafrul up, which means by digging that particular area up. So for example, just say again some impurities or some najas has fallen in your garden. So the third way which is available to us to get rid of this particular impurity is by digging that particular area where the impurity or najas has fallen, and by digging that particular area up and removing the impure stones and mud, then that particular land and that particular earth will become park and pure. And the last 2 methods which are mentioned, i.e. pouring water or digging that particular area, if you were to do that, then you will get complete purification of that particular area. I.e. it will be permissible for you to observe salah over it, and it will also be permissible for you to do tayammum from it. It's only the first situation where, say for example, when you let the sun dry away and take away the impurity, that only gives you a partial purification, i.e. you are only allowed to pray salah over that and you're not allowed to do tayammum from it. However, if you were to use method 2 and method 3, i.e. poured water over that area, or you dug away the stones and the mud, then it will give you complete purification in terms of praying salah over it will be permissible and lawful, and also doing tayammum from that will also be allowed and will also be permissible as well. Now, with regard to this particular ruling and masla, with regard to drying things up. Now remember, drying or using the sun to dry areas up is only considered an act of purification for land or for the earth. Now what I mean by that is, just say for example, just say there's a mosque carpet or some carpet at home or a rug at home, and just say you've got a little child who's urinated on that rug. So what do some people do? They just get the rug and take it outside and just leave it outside so that the sun could dry. Now, obviously the sun will dry that impurity away, but that particular rug will not become pak and will not become pure. Because as I just said, using the sun to make something pure and pak is only restricted to the earth and to the land. If it's something like, for example, rugs or carpets where impurity has fallen or a baby has urinated on that particular carpet or rug, you can't just take it outside and just let the sun dry that up and then assume that particular rug or that particular carpet to be pak and pure. But instead, if it's a carpet or a rug, you will have to firstly wash that particular area, and then leave it outside so that it can get dry. Without washing it, by leaving the carpet or rug outside, then that particular rug or carpet does not become pak and does not become pure. Now the next few lines or so, we're now going to look at najasat ghaliza and najasat khafifa in a bit more detail in terms of what is the minimum amount you're allowed for it to become pak and pure. What is the minimum amount you're allowed with which namaz and salah is accepted and will be valid. Now, as I explained at the beginning of the lesson, that examples of najasat ghaliza are such as, for example, blood or urine and so on and so forth. Now, the author is saying that a person has a discretion up to a 50-pence coin, i.e. equivalent to a dirham, up to a 50-pence coin, there is discretion. Now what I mean by that is, just say for example, on your clothes there's a small drop of urine, or there is a small drop of blood. So as long as the urine or the blood is not equivalent to a 50-pence coin, there is leeway from the Sharia in terms of you praying salah in that clothes and your salah being accepted. So that is the ruling when it comes to najasat ghaliza. So any dense or heavy type of impurities, whether it's like blood, whether it's kind of urine, whether it's alcohol, whatever, so you've got a discretion up to a 50-pence coin to pray salah. Now don't get me wrong, if you know that there's a blood there and it's less than a 50-pence coin, then to read salah without washing the blood away is considered makruh tanzihi and is considered slightly disliked. Even though your namaz is going to be accepted, but if you know that there's actually blood there, but you thought, oh, I can't be asked washing it, my namaz is going to be accepted anyway, I might as well just come and read namaz and then forget all about it. So if you did that knowingly and intentionally, or out of laziness, your namaz is going to be accepted, but it's going to be slightly disliked. So the preferable thing to do is that if there is even a little bit of blood, or even a little bit of alcohol or urine, which is less than the 50-pence coin, even though your obligation and the farziyah of the salah is going to be accepted, but it's preferable that you get rid of it. However, if something like blood or from the najasat ghaliza, like blood or urine, If it's more than 50 pence, if the area more than a 50 pence coin is on your clothes or is on your body, then to read salah with such clothing or to read salah in such a state, your namaz will not be accepted. Because as I mentioned before, it is obligatory that you have to make sure that your clothes are clean, you have to make sure that your body is clean. So to read salah in such a way, your namaz will not be accepted and your namaz will not be done. Now with regards to the next angle, i.e. najas khafifa, so I gave the example of najas khafifa, i.e. those impurities which is of a light category, and examples of those are the urine of halal animals. Now the scholars have written that with regards to najas khafifa, you have a discretion or leeway up to a quarter of a part of your garment. Now you have a discretion or leeway to read salah in such a state up to a quarter of a part of your garment. Now what I mean by that, a part of your garment, what I mean is that when we say a quarter, we don't mean a quarter of your whole jumper, or we don't mean the quarter of your whole jubba, or the quarter of your whole trousers or your whole sock. What we mean is that part of the garment, you have a discretion up to a quarter of that particular part. So let me give you an example. Just say this jumper here which I'm wearing, it's got like three parts, you could say. One is the sleeve, which is like stitched up until the body. Then you've got the body area here, then you've got the back area again, which is stitched, and then you've got the sleeve here again. Now what I mean is that, just say for example, if the urine of, say, a horse fell on my jumper. Now if it fell, say, on my arms, so we don't look at whether it is a quarter of the whole jumper, but what we look at is that whether it is a quarter from here up to the armpit, which is like one part. Because that part then stitches up with the middle part. So we look at whether it is a quarter of the arm. So if it's a quarter of the arm, you have to be probably around here. So if it's, say for example, less than that, then to read namaz in this jumper will be allowed and permissible for me. If it's more than that, then it would not be allowed. So what I mean by the part here, I don't mean the part in terms of the actual jumper itself, that we look at whether the urine which has fallen is equivalent to 1/4 of the jumper. What we mean is 1/4 of that particular area or part of the jumper. So like for example, the sleeves are considered as one part. This bit here is considered as another part. The back, again, which is stitched up, is also considered another part, and so on and so forth. If you take the example of your jubba, so again, jubba's got many parts. You've got the arm all the way up to the armpit side, then you've got another stitch there, you've got like a pocket, you've got like another kind of stitch for the pocket, you've got a stitch at the bottom, and so on. So we look at each area of the jubba. We're not looking at the whole jubba itself, now whether it's a quarter to that, quarter of that, but we're looking at each area, whether the urine of the halal animal is equivalent to 1/4 of that area or not. If it's less than 1/4 of that area, namaz in such a garment will be jaiz and permissible. But if it's more than that, then namaz or salah in that particular garment would not be allowed and would not be permissible. And this is what is mentioned very briefly here, where the author says that if it's najas mukhaffafa, such as kabawli ma yukkal lahmuhu, such as the urine of halal animals, then jazati salatu ma'ahu, to pray salah or namaz with it is permissible and jaiz, ma lam tablugh rub as-saw, as long as it does not reach 1/4 of a saw. Again, saw, as I said, it doesn't mean the actual jumper itself, but it means that part of the saw. As long as it's less than a quarter, then namaz in such garments or such clothing will be permissible and jaiz. Now just a couple of more rulings left before we finish this particular section. As I mentioned before, with regards to najasa ghalita, and then there are two category impurities which can be seen known as mar'iyya, and then those impurities which cannot be seen such as ghair mar'iyya. Now what we're going to do in the next couple of lines or so, we are going to look at how to get rid of the impurity. How many times do we have to wash it? How hard do we have to wash it, and so on and so forth? Do we have to use any soap or liquid or something like that to get rid of it? So what is the relevant rulings with regards to those two categories? Now we're going to start off with najasat mar'iyya, i.e. those impurities which can be seen. Now the ruling is that if on our clothes, if there are impurities which are visible, which can be seen, such as blood, such as feces, then the ruling is فَطَهَارَتُهَا زَوَالُ عَيْنِهَا. We have to make sure that the whole area is clean. We have to make sure that the body of the impurity has been eradicated or has disappeared for us to then say that that particular garment or that particular clothing is park and pure. So just say, for example, if I got a big massive blood patch on my jubba, now that area will only be clean when I wash it, and then the particular blood, that blood mark which was there, the body and the essence of that disappears. Now the author then goes into saying that if the stain of that particular impurity still remains after washing, then that is okay. Meaning that the garment is still considered pure and park. So just as an example, like remember, if there's some blood on your clothes and you try to go to the wuzu area and try to wash it, it is obvious that even though you may wash it 3 times, 5 times, 10 times, it doesn't matter. There is always going to be some impression of the blood still on the clothes. That will only disappear if you were to put it into the washing machine. Obviously, you won't be able to put it into a washing machine because you're outside, you're in the mosque somewhere. So therefore, as long as you wash it thoroughly 3 or 4 times, and the body of the impurity or najis disappears, then that is sufficient, and your garment will be considered park and pure. And it's not even necessary for you, when you come to wash the blood or the impurity off, it's not even necessary to actually use soap or to actually use liquid to get rid of that. As long as you use clean, pure water, and you get rid of the body of the impurity, then that clothes will be considered park and pure. It's not necessary for you to use some fairy liquid or to use some kind of soap and to make sure that you get that kind of bubbly feeling on the clothes and then wash it off. That's not even necessary. As long as you wash it a few times, 3, 4 times, until you are satisfied that that particular area is clean and park, then that is sufficient. And even though the impression or the stain may remain there, it doesn't matter, it is still considered park and pure. And with regards to those impurities which cannot be seen, then the scholars have said, like for example, urine and alcohol. So if some urine or alcohol was to fall on the clothes, then the ruling is that you have to wash it until you are satisfied that that particular area is clean. Obviously, something like urine or alcohol, even though it does have a trace, it does have a kind of body or essence, but it's not as evident as, say, blood or as feces. So if some urine was to fall on your clothes, you should wash it until you are satisfied that this particular area is clean. So it's not restricted to 3 times. You could do it 3 times. Some scholars have said that for those who suffer from waswasa and doubt problems, then they should do it 3 times. But if you say, for example, wash it once and your heart is saying that, or is content that this particular area is clean, then that will be sufficient. Or if you say, for example, wash it 7 times and then your heart is saying, okay, this area is clean and park, then that will be sufficient. So that is the ruling here, that as long as you are satisfied that that particular area is clean, then that is okay. However, the scholars have said that when it comes to purifying impurity or najas which is not evident or not clear, every time you wash it, so whether you're washing it 3 times or 1 time or 2 times, it doesn't matter, every time you wash it, it is obligatory for you to squeeze that area, to squeeze it. So just take an example like some jubba, whatever, and some alcohol or some kind of urine has fallen on it. Okay, so because it's najas ghayr mar'iyya, i.e. those impurities which is not evident, which cannot be seen, so you have to wash it. But there's no number on how many times you have to wash it. So just say, for example, you decide to wash it 2 times. Now, every time you wash it, you have to squeeze it afterwards. That is what you're going to be obligatory to do. So if you wash it, say, 5 times, so after each time you have to squeeze it. Wash it again, squeeze it, and so on, so that the impurity, because it cannot be seen, so any impurity which is actually gone inside the clothing, then when you're washing it and then squeezing it, so while squeezing it, the impurity and the najas will then drip out. The same way the water will be dripping, the impurity will also drip as well. So the conclusion of the last ruling is that those impurities which can be seen, which is evident, which is najas mar'iyya, such as feces and blood, then it is necessary that you wash it to the extent that the body or the trace of the impurity goes away. If some impression remains there afterwards, that is okay. But as long as the body and the majority of the thing has gone away, has been eradicated, then that is sufficient. And with regards to those impurities which cannot be seen, i.e. najas ghayr mar'iyya, then the ruling is that you should wash it until you get this satisfaction in your heart that this area is now clean. However, one thing to remember is that every time you clean it, you have to make sure that you rinse it, so that whilst rinsing, the impurity which has kind of got concealed or hidden inside, then that will also be washed away when you are rinsing the garment or the area. So inshallah we'll leave it here for this week, when that's when you will see what has been said. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillah.